What's up, everybody? Appreciate you being here. Wanted to let you know before we get into the show, there's a couple of easy ways that you can help me with it. With ideas, problems, solutions to whatever you find interesting, anything from a word to an essay, just send it to me. Through the comment section, wherever you listen, on Instagram or Twitter, I'm on both at The Best Idea, or straight to the email, bestideapodcast@gmail.com. Or you can support it in other ways. You can rate it wherever you listen it to. That's probably the easiest. Subscribing to the YouTube page is very helpful. The most direct way is Patreon. Patreon.com/thebestidea. $1 a month just to show some support. If you do $3 a month, you'll get early access to the Stop the Presses episodes. You sign up once, you don't have to think about it again. I really appreciate your time. And here we go. Welcome back to the Best Idea Podcast. I'm Stephen Cochran. This is a Stop the Presses episode, the Rich Bitch edition. And I titled it that because it turns out that the list of cool shit that you are enabled to do, entitled to do, privileged to do when you have a lot of money, that list is not as long as I originally thought that it was, which is extremely discouraging to those of us not in the club. We assumed that when you have a certain amount of money, you can basically do whatever you want. You don't have to worry about paying for your parking tickets, for example. You meet all sorts of cool people that help you cheat on your taxes. You can take a private plane from one country to the other without ever showing your passport. I mean, the pretty expansive list, but it's not as long as I thought it was. And this particular episode centers on Operation Varsity Blues. I don't know if you remember it, but it was this big college admissions scandal. And they just wrapped up, not too long ago, the final sentencing and court cases on this particular scandal. But it started in like 2018. And it made it very clear to me, just in ignorant layman, that list does not include bribing and cheating your kids into universities. And that is just stunning. And it all started with something that has absolutely nothing to do with being admitted to college. There was a guy named Tobin who was in some really, really deep shit with the FBI for securities fraud. And he was going through the sentencing process. And as a Hail Mary of cooperation, he just kind of throws out there, oh, hey, by the way, I think, or I could find out more about this woman who works at a college, a guy who works at a college, it wasn't a woman, who offered to get his daughter into school if he paid $450,000. This guy's last name was Meredith, the one that offered to get the kid into college. So Tobin just kind of throws this out there to the FBI and says, look, take it easy on me with sentencing, and I'll give you these people that are running this little show over here. So he wore a wire, went and met with this guy, Meredith, talked about it. Well, this guy, Meredith, he flipped immediately, and this is where we meet the person orchestrating the whole thing, the guy that really single-handedly was running this show, named William Singer, Rick Singer. This guy Singer was quite a piece of work. His career started pretty normal. He was a teacher. He was an athletic coach. He founded a college counseling business in the 90s. He sold it, made some good money on it. He worked at some fucking call centers for a while. He sold like an online educational thing to this company called Kaplan. He published a book, but for our purposes, he started a different company like 20 years ago. And it was a college consulting company. He was somebody that parents would come to help them understand the admissions process into these colleges and help them navigate it. I didn't even know a job like that existed. You know what I mean? It's one of those jobs until you hear of it. You know, I wouldn't have thought it was a thing. It's fucking genius, but it's like, you know, dog wigs or like a rent-a-friend service or something. You know, I wouldn't have thought of it. But now that it's been brought to my attention, of course, dog wigs and college consulting. But he had just a dramatic, wide infrastructure to do what he was doing. So the way he set it up was basically two ways he would get these kids into college. He would go academic or he would go athletic, basically. There's some evidence that he also would like fudge the ethnicities of these kids too, to just you know, throw a cherry on top. But mostly it was either academics or it was athletics. So with the academics, a couple of different things he would do. So he had two testing sites. So what he would do is he would tell the parents that he would get their kids a better ACT or an SAT score, one way or the other. He had a couple of different ways of doing this. Either he would have the kids orchestrate it so that they would go to one of these two testing sites that he basically controlled because he was bribing everybody that worked there. They would go there, take their tests, and then whoever was giving the test, the proctor of the test, would fudge the numbers a little bit, would, you know, change this, change that, turn a 23 into a 32 on the ACT, that sort of thing. Or he would just have somebody take the test for them. Somebody sit and just take the examination. Matter of fact, one of the guys that went down for this, his name is Mark Riddle, or Riddell, I don't know how he says it. This guy graduated Harvard himself and played sports there, all this other shit. But graduated Harvard, really smart guy. He would just take these ACTs and consistently get like 34s and 35s on them. I mean, it's out of 36. The guy was just really smart. And this is how he chose to use his his genius. So he would fudge the tests. Now, the other way that he would do this through the athletics, to me, is not only a little bit more interesting, but it is certainly more hilarious. You know, bribe coaches, bribe athletic directors. Like, there's a story in the New York Times about a U.S.C. coach who was the water polo coach. You're going to be I was shocked at how many of these kids were applying to schools to get on the fucking water polo teams. But this guy, Jovan Vavic, is apparently he's, you know, creme de la creme of water polo coaches. 16 national championships for anybody that gives a shit about water polo. So he would bribe coaches like that. But he would also, with the kids themselves, they would just make up like athletic resumes for these kids. They were playing, like, they were getting accepted into colleges for sports they didn't play. You know what I'm saying? Like, so they'd have, you know, pay $250,000 to say that your kid is on the soccer team and never has played soccer. There's one story that I'll get to in a second about a kid who tried to go to school for water polo. His high school didn't even have a water polo team. So just whole cloth invention, like taking pictures of other people playing sports and just photoshopping these kids on to the bodies of the actual athletes. Just blatant, we ain't gonna get caught type of behavior. And so some examples of these people. There's one of the coaches, John Vandermoor. I might be saying his name wrong. He was the sailing coach at Stanford. This guy took $600,000 in bribes. Now, we're about to run into a trend with all these people. There's a lot more people than I'm going to name here. There's something like 33 different sets of parents got sentenced. I think 54 were indicted in entirety. But this is not an exhaustive list. I'll add that to the show notes. But this guy, the sailing coach at Stanford, $600,000 in bribes. He got 1 day in jail, and he paid $10,000 in fine. That's it. But this is illegal, apparently. There's Augustin Hanias. This guy owns a vineyard. All right, he paid $300,000 to fix some SAT scores and get his daughter into U.S.C. on the water polo team. Faked a picture of her playing water polo, like ordered a bunch of shit off of Amazon and had her wear it. Told her about it, about the whole plot that he was doing. This guy got 5 months, had to do 500 hours of community service, had to pay a $100,000 fine. So $400,000 to get his daughter total into U.S.C. And then she didn't even get in. Toby McFarland, this is an insurance guy. Dude paid $450,000 to get his daughter and son into U.S.C. for soccer and basketball. He put on the paper that his son was 6'1" basketball player. Dude's 5'5". He got 6 months in jail, and he has to pay a $150,000 fine. His lawyer tried to say that he was depressed after he got divorced, and that's why he did all this. I wonder if lying and cheating had anything to do with why the marriage didn't work out. It's just a guess. Devin Sloan, this guy owns a wastewater company. He paid $250,000 to get his son into U.S.C. This is the one, his high school didn't even have a team. This kid's actually got all the balls. So his name's Mateo Sloan. His dad paid $250,000 to get him into U.S.C., okay, for water polo. Some of the money went to the coach. Everybody was involved. The kid didn't play water polo, okay? His high school didn't have a water polo team, as mine didn't either. Yours probably didn't either. And the thing about this kid is, after his dad gets arrested for this, he gets interviewed by the Wall Street Journal and says, this is a direct quote, he says, "It kind of takes the value away of the work I did to get there in the first place." He's talking about the college. The work that he did. He said, "I was very mad, and then it kind of transformed into me feeling sorry for him." This kid didn't fucking play water polo. But he's talking about how hard he worked to get into this school, and he didn't get in. You didn't work hard enough, Junior. You didn't do it. It was done for you. There's another guy named Steven. His name's not Steven. It's Steven with a PH. Either his name is Stefan, or everybody you know named Stephanie is really named Stephanie. You guys decide, but this dude's name is not Steven. Anyway, Simpravivo, he's just some sales guy. This dude paid $400,000 to get his son into Georgetown for tennis. Kid doesn't play tennis. Kid sucks at tennis. His dad, Stefan, got 4 months in jail, 500 hours community service, and a $100,000 fine. And the kid got expelled from Georgetown anyway. As a matter of fact, actually, this is another fucking ballsy kid. After this kid got kicked out, he sued the school. He sued Georgetown so that he wouldn't get expelled. Adam, sounds like the name of a kid that would pull some shit like this. Adam Simpravivo filed his lawsuit just a few hours before the school announced in a statement that it would be dismissing 2 current students tied to the nationwide college scandals. Yeah, of course he got expelled. He shouldn't have gotten in, and it happened to come out. Then there's Greg and Marcia Abbott, who own a beverage company. They paid $125,000 to get their daughter's SAT and ACT scores fixed. This girl took this test, got a 23 on the ACT, okay, out of 36. They pay this money, score turns into a 35. Same thing with the SAT. She did like middle of the road on the SAT. They drop $125K. Turns out this girl's a fucking genius. Now, the best thing about these two people, about Mr. and Mrs. Abbott, is actually their son, who wasn't involved in this, because he gave an interview to the New York Post after his parents got convicted. And the great thing about Malcolm Abbott, the son of Greg and Marcia Abbott, is that he is an aspiring rapper, and his rap name is Billa. And he told the New York Post in an interview after his parents were convicted that everybody has a right to go to school and this isn't that big a deal, but everybody should buy his album called Cheese and Crackers. I'm not making that up at all. I'll have it in the show notes. I promise you that will be in the fucking show notes. Cheese and Crackers. Get that album by Billa. Here I was thinking it was a much smoother enterprise to be this wealthy that you can drop $125,000 because your daughter's stupider than you want her to be. There's another guy named Jeff Bizak who paid $250,000 to get his son on the volleyball team at one of these colleges. Like, why volleyball? You know, you think that like basketball would have been more expensive. None of these people fucked around with the football or the basketball teams. It's always like these little offshoot sports. There's a lady named Sianing Su who paid $400,000 to get her son into University of California for soccer. She actually got arrested for this shit in Spain. She spent 5 months in a Spanish prison for this. And then she finally got extradited and the judge just gave her time served in the Spanish prison. I'm sure that was lovely. Got that lady from Full House and her husband paid $500,000 for their daughters to get into U.S.C. Fake pictures, fake resumes, the whole 9 yards. And then there's this other guy who stood out to me of all of them, John Wilson. So this guy worked for Staples. He was an executive there. Paid $220,000. So listen to all these fucking numbers I'm throwing around. $400,000, $250,000, $500,000. This guy paid $220,000 to get his son into U.S.C., but he promised to pay another $1.5 million to get his two daughters into Harvard and Stanford. So he dropped $220,000 on his son to get into U.S.C., which is a really great school. Promised $1.5, $750,000 a piece for his two daughters to get into Harvard and Stanford. So here's the question. What does this say about his son? Only willing to put up a little $220,000 to get his boy into U.S.C., maybe he's not as promising a future as the two daughters. Or maybe the two daughters are such poor students that they needed the extra money just to make it look like, you know, it was going to work out. That guy got 15 months. He's actually one of the people that got a comparatively significant amount of time, 15 months. And so all these parents, they pretty much all got convicted or pled guilty or cooperated or whatever. And they spent more money trying to get light sentences. They were hiring fucking videographers and script writers to talk about all their charity work and how horrible this has all been for their families. And I don't understand what they're doing. I mean, didn't they think, like I thought, that this was on the list? This is supposed to be on the list, right? Of things you can do. Is it private institutions, right? You can pay them a bunch of money and your kid gets into college. I'm still surprised that this isn't on the fucking list. And you know what else? You know what these parents aren't angry about, and they really, really should be, is there are huge discrepancies between the cost for these kids. Some of these kids to get their ACT scores fixed cost $15,000. Other kids, $75,000. Other kids, $115,000. What is this guy trying to pull? I mean, it's as though Mr. Singer can't be trusted. I mean, he's charging this price over here, this price over here. This guy has no uniformity in his pricing whatsoever. I mean, this is the sort of shit that needs to get investigated by somebody. Seriously. These poor parents were cheated. And then there's other articles that talk about the kids. You know, these kind of sad articles, where they are now, what ended up happening to the kids, all this sort of shit. And what I find amazing is that these children expect others to believe that they didn't know that this was happening. Maybe some didn't know, but the idea that most of them didn't is just, that's a little bit too much for me to believe. If you get accepted, so imagine how this conversation goes. Like, you come home and your dad's like, hey, Adam, you got some mail from U.S.C. and you crack it open, and it's an acceptance letter, and you're really fucking excited, and you notice on there that you've been accepted for water polo. Now, you know you don't play water polo. Your dad knows you don't play water polo. You were there when you had to wear all that water polo gear and take those pictures. Pretty sure you know that there was some fuckery going on to get you into the school for playing water polo. Or with the test scores. Do you think kids don't know what level they're at when it comes to testing? You think some C student is just going to knock the ACT out of the park, catch a 32? I don't fucking think so. The way that it's going down for the kids is the greatest part of this whole thing. So take, for example, one of the more, the famous parents this happened to, Felicity Huffman. I don't know who this woman is. I'm told she's an actress. Terrific. Her and her husband, actually I know her husband, William Macy. If you look at him, he's his face. I have no idea who she is. Either way, doesn't matter. They're two of the more famous people caught up in all this, and their daughter is the one they were paying for. Well, their daughter, Sophia, was flying to Juilliard for the final round of auditions for admission to this performing arts school. And the school sent her an email and withdrew the invitation. Didn't even let her try out. The quote is, "She called us from the airport in hysterics. From the devastation of that day, Sophia is slowly regaining her equilibrium and getting on with her life. So brave Sophia is." And the article goes on. Almost immediately after arrests were announced last March, colleges opened investigations into students with ties to the scandal. Yale, Stanford, Georgetown, Northwestern, University of Southern California each expelled students or revoked students' admissions. These kids were getting dropped like fucking flies. Now, some of them didn't take it lying down, like our boy Mateo, the water polo recruit who never played the fucking sport. This guy had the balls to actually sue, but that's fine. There's another lady. Everybody's heard of Hot Pockets. Well, it turns out the lady that is the heir to the Hot Pocket fortune was caught up in all of this shit too. Her kids went to this really fancy high school, private high school, banned both her daughters from campus and events like graduation and prom. They had to complete the entire year's work at home. And they got their diplomas. The one that graduated that year, she got her diploma in the mail. The lawyers for the girls wrote that they were shunned by their friends and their teachers and their classmates. And they just don't know why, they're just trying to get on with their lives and blah, blah, blah. Actually, in a letter to the judge, this woman's name is Janovis. It's a kind of a weird last name. But her husband told the judge that the FBI had handcuffed two girls that were barefoot in their pajamas when they came to arrest their parents. You can't make this shit up. They said, "Well, this has been excruciatingly painful and devastating for Michelle, the mom. It's been equally painful for our family," he wrote. "There have been too many days during the past 11 months during which I held both of my daughters in my arms as they cried out over a broad combination of emotions, including anger at their mother and sorrow and great anxiety about their fate. I feel for them. Who knows where they'll land after something like this? I mean, all they have is parents wealthy enough to drop $250,000 to make them seem like they're smarter than they really are. I mean, who knows? Who fucking knows?" And with all of it, I am just left with, I just didn't think that these were crimes. Is this not standard operating procedure when you have a lot? I mean, what is the point of even being rich anymore? Seriously. And, I'm glad that at least two of these parents agree with me and are fighting for their right to cheat their kids' way into school. Guy I told you about, John Wilson. If you look at a picture of John Wilson's face, it is the most Just this guy just looks like a piece of shit. I mean, he just looks like a shitty human. His skull is shaped in a shitty human form, and he has like a scowl seemingly all the time. I don't know that he can unscowl his face. But John Wilson and then Gamal Abdelaziz, who's a Vegas casino guy, they're both fighting back. They have appealed their convictions. They both got over a year. And their lawyers are saying what the fuck I'm saying, that donations to universities in an effort to secure admissions are commonplace and do not constitute bribery. Now, obviously, they constitute bribery. But aren't you supposed to be able to do that? When you're, six-figure bribes, those, I thought that maybe I watched too many movies. I thought those were allowed. His lawyer said, donating to a university is not bribing its employees. The school cannot be both the victim and the beneficiary. Exactly. I'm trying to preserve this right to be shitty. It's a sad state of affairs. A few episodes ago, we talked about how we're losing billionaires, and now even the few rich people that are left are not able to live the life that they have become accustomed to. And I, for one, think that we need to do more to protect them. And this has, of course, led, because this is America, to ridiculous lawsuits. The most ridiculous of them is a woman who claims that her son was wronged because he tried to get into one of these schools and was rejected. Jennifer K. Toy filed a complaint in California against all of the defendants in this scandal, claiming that her son was unfairly disadvantaged because these people were putting out all this money. Two things. Number one, I seriously doubt that one of the few dozen kids that got into or was promised to get into these schools kept this woman's son out. Moreover, that's the saddest shit I've ever heard. It's a little bit beyond pathetic. She's also suing for $500 billion. That is billion with a B. $500 billion she's suing for. Just let that so. She's suing these 30 people for $500 billion and saying that my son, despite a good work ethic and a 4.2 GPA, blah, 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 he would have got it. No, he wouldn't have gotten in. Something about him rubbed all of those schools the wrong way. And I don't think you can blame poor Mr. Wilson over here because your son didn't have the qualifications to get in. And on top of that, you hadn't scraped together the cash to pay Mr. Singer to get him in through the side door. Hold yourself accountable. Unbelievable. Can never take accountability. This is America now. You can pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. Once you get there, you are no longer allowed to pay schools to take your stupid kids or your unathletic kids into their admissions. I hope the shock wears off. I hope you can enjoy the rest of your day despite this awful news. And I appreciate you listening, and I'll see you next time.